Thank you. So we now continue with the fourth session. I will moderate this one. We do not have a break now. We continue, and yeah, there is a chance that there will be coffee or tea in between, but at least until that moment we will continue. I understood that the first presenter, Alle Maeu Ambau, is online, and I would give him the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here it is almost good evening, and I'm sorry I can't be there, but it would have been very nice if I was there personally and present this work. A majority of this work is probably presented by my colleague, Prof. Paulo, but I will try to stress on this particular work, which is the implementation of virtual prototyping in the context of fresh fruit packaging design. The intention is to share our success story, so to say, because this work starts from a concept level and reach to a final commercial testing level. And I want to share that with you today. And probably if you follow us throughout the consortium, it has been there from the start, and is a historic progress of the last 2 to 3 years. And now we are happy that it is there for commercial trial. And so to give you a background, the main activity as a post-harvester is to play with atmospheric air, as nicely presented here in UC Davis, when by changing normal air to this, let me use the pointer, by using this modification, increasing the carbon dioxide level and decreasing the oxygen level, that is modification of the air, you can create this almost a miracle. And all our activity as a post-harvester is to implement this technique everywhere in the cold chain. We try to play with temperature, humidity, air velocity, water activity, pH, and we measure all those parameters, and we use technique to implement and make use of this principle, extending post-harvest shelf life. And so we also acknowledge the fact that this problem is not easy. It is a multi-scale, multi-level, and multi-physics. It starts from producing the fruit as you see here, packing into a single package, and palletization and transportation via air or ship, as you see here. So it's not an easy problem. So it really requires a multidisciplinary approach, and that really is developed here in our research group by Prof. Opara. The group that we have is from different field of study. Engineers, scientists are there and participated here. So it's not, the work that I am going to present to you is not 1 month's job or a 2-year or 3-year job, but it's a distillation of many years of research in the fresh fruit value chain. So here you see our core activity in coming up to this idea. We gone through a lot of physiology. You should know your fruit, how it respires, its climatic characteristic, its chilling sensitivity, its ethylene sensitivity, and you also be acquainted with post-harvest handling systems like pre-cooling, cold storage, refrigerated transport, and also packaging principle and value addition, omics. These two are separate from the presentation that I will do today. But in order to arrive to a solution like I'm going to present to you, we need to have a strong knowledge of these 3 knowledge pool: physiology, post-harvest handling system, and packaging. And in our lab, we use this research approach. We do a lot of experiment, but also we use computational technique like CFD, as you see here, to to supplement or to support our testing capability. What you see here is carton compression box machine. We have a pilot cool store and also a full-scale reefer container, forced airflow equipment, cooling equipment, and also Stellenbosch University have a pool of big and expensive equipment in central analytical lab. We also have that access. And safety that I told you is a method, is a well-proven method used in sport industry, in the auto industry, medical industry, and we are trying to use it in post-harvest. The technique is proven, so we are trying to bring it here and use it to model two regions of the problem, be it the fruit and the process. A process means the airflow, cooling, the heat and mass transfer, and about the process is physiology, that is this ripening stage, it's weight loss, shrinkage, and all those aspects now can be virtualized, can be modeled, and be used with the process, and that will allow you to perform a lot of what if scenarios. You can do it if you come up with a realistic model. It really reduce time and testing costs, and it increase your ability of analyzing alternatives. So that is our facility, our background, and this knowledge is now used to solve this problem in post-harvest handling of pomegranate fruit. We do an analysis that existing pomegranate package, as you see it here, the first one with plastic, the second one is without plastic, but these are the frequently used cartons in the industry. And we do an analysis, and we saw that they are indeed very poor in space usage, where you use your storage or reefer container. And also there is a very poor in the airflow distribution, and there is energy loss. And having that problem at hand first, we do a preliminary virtualization, virtual analysis by turning this box, which this one is what we have in the industry. We provide this additional vent hole and be able to increase the airflow distribution as you see it here. This one is a modified box. This one is the original box. As you see here, in the original box, the airflow are channeled, and there are clearly a region of the pallet where you have different airflow distribution, front and the back. So providing those vent hole create this increased mixing and contact between the fruit and the air. So as you see here in this table, there is a considerable, say, about 14% decrease in cooling time. So that was the first result that we have, is published in Journal of Food Engineering. You can get it as one of output from this research. And then continuing that aspect, we come up with this flow diagram, as you see here, which is an attempt to virtualize the whole cartoon design process in a computer. It starts from a concept, it digitized concept, as you see it here. Original boxes are a single layer and very poor in space usage. So a first concept is to have 2 layers of fruit in a single box, and the concept is digitized here, and a carton strength is modeled. As you see here, carton strengths are modeled using appropriate model. What you see here as a curl code is the mode of deformation or the mode of failure of various competing designs. And airflow is modeled, and its cooling capacity and air distribution capacity is also modeled. And finally, based on this virtual comparison of this alternative, we come up with a winning design, as you see it here. And then we go to physical prototyping first. We manufacture 2-3 boxes and we do in-house testing of its strengths till your fruit is totally damaged, as you see here, and that is quantized. And also now we'll be able to have a fund from the Innovus group, the Innovation Center. The university have that center. They see the potential of this project and they sponsor the export trail of this box. What you see here in this movie is our box in the pack house with the box that has been used before. And now we already packed pomegranates, send them to Europe, Germany, and we already have, it's almost yesterday that I have a result concerning our box. It's almost positive, but still I need to process that result, but it's encouraging. We are so happy that it goes there and at least function as good as existing boxes with the added benefit of saving space. As you see here, it can facilitate a pre-cooling process by 17%, and energy usage is reduced by 30%. And in a single container, we can send now 5 tons more fruits than the existing carton. As you see here, we deploy sensors in the carton, and so that we follow them throughout this path to Europe, and we use that to further validate our model as you see it here. And so this is a single experiment, a single commercial test, but our model will be used to do the same test for different scenarios, be it different environmental conditions, say in summer or winter, or with some anomalies, say loading at higher than normal temperature or lower than normal temperature. So that is a current situation of this box now, which we are happy to reach at this commercial test. And with this, I should end my presentation and thank you for your time.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Very interesting. We now go to the following presentation. Any question can be raised at the end of this session. So if I understand well, Fernando will now take over and present an updated version of the SIPOP system.
Hi, my name is Fernando. I'm a researcher from the University of São Paulo in Brazil, and I'm here today to talk a little bit more about the updated version of the SIPOC, Post-Harvest Loss Database. So it's a pleasure being here today and have the opportunity to talk with you guys, and I really appreciate this opportunity, and I want to say thank you to all the symposium organizers. So what is the goal of SIPOC? SIPOC is the Post-Harvest Loss Information System. We call it SIPOC, is here in Brazil. And the main goal is to provide information and tools related to the post-harvest losses in Brazil and for many countries, for different crops and for different supply chain levels. So SIPOC is a website that integrates GIS tools, our grains loss calculator, and a huge database of food loss and food waste with food loss and food waste indicators. And that is my point in this presentation. I'm going to talk about the updated version of this database. And the idea here is to help decisions related to post-harvest loss in Brazil and other countries by both public and private sectors. So if you are a public agent or a researcher, you can access the SIPOC and check it out check the tools out, and check the database out. So SciPoc is an initiative of the Zoutlog group, is the group that I work for. Zoutlog is the research and extension group in agroindustrial logistics. So we are a group of the University of São Paulo in Brazil. And we provide information of information related to the post-harvest loss issues, but we also provide information, great information in trade value, transportation costs, and storage issues here for the Brazilian context. So we have been developing different projects and studies related to the transportation market analysis in Brazil, in agro logistics in Brazil, and other countries. So Professor José Vicente Caixeta Filho is the founder and general coordinator of the group. He's the leader of the team that is working with SciPoc activities. Thiago is the technical coordinator of Zoutlog, is also leading the group. My name is Fernando, as I presented before. And we also have working with us Connie Peninsu. It's a PhD candidate at in applied economics here at Zoutlog. Everton Lima Costa is also another PhD candidate here at the University of São Paulo. And we also have Lavínia Bettoni and Sara Barbosa da Silva. So they are undergrad students in economics here at the University of São Paulo. And I also want to highlight Lavínia and Sara works in this last update of the post-harvest loss database. So SciPoc started in 2017. On that time, it was a project financed by FUPESP here in Brazil. In 2019, we became member of the Consortium for Innovation in Post-Harvest Loss and Food Waste Reduction. So we started to work again in the SciPoc to release this second version, in this updated version with new tools in a new platform with information of post-harvest loss. And here today, I will talk a little bit more about this database update. So this is the login area of SciPoc. You can access the platform using this QR code in this link in this presentation. And let's go. Let's see how is the platform right now. And what about the numbers? How much data do we have in our database? So very fast, SciPoc has some different tools included in the platform. We have a grains post-harvest loss calculator here, and two GIS solutions, GIS tools with some agro-logistics indicators for São Paulo State here in Brazil, and a map of grains post-harvest loss specifically for São Paulo State. So we want to make these tools available, this data available for even more places, even more locations. And if you have some university, if you have some group that are interested in this kind of work, let's talk later. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's talk about this in future opportunities. But today, let's focus on the global post-harvest loss information database. So accessing SciPoc, you have access to these 4 tools. Nowadays, this updated version will have 5,020 pieces of information of post-harvest loss in this global post-harvest loss information database. So those information came from 88 countries and 23 crops with available data. And the main idea of SciPoc is grab post-harvest loss information for scientific papers and conference papers, or specifically, so we grab this information using published scientific works. So we have included in this updated version more than 261 papers are included, are cited the SciPoc. So when we check the papers, we grab this information, and we created the system that analyze and make the information available. So this is the database overview, the number of papers per year. So In this last update, we added a little bit more papers from the last 3 years, in fact. So we have an overview about the post-harvest loss data, piece of information per crop group. So most part of the data is cereals and fruits related. So the post-harvest loss per crop, we have maize and rice and tomato as the top 3 crops with information in this database. And here is the analysis per country. So our idea is to map post-harvest loss indicators as much as we can for different crops, different countries. And the last version, United States, Brazil, India, Ghana, and Zimbabwe are the top 5 countries with information of post-harvest loss included in our database. So here, I invited you to navigate through this platform. You can check the average crop loss during different supply chain levels. So during harvest, you can compare the crops. Tomato has an average during harvest of 50.28%, the carrots 2.10%. So you can compare the crops, compare the supply chain levels. We can also access another kind of analysis. You can see how spread are the data. So you can select, for example, a specific crop here, maize, and see how the papers, the scientific works, measure the loss of maize during consumer, during farming, during harvest, during processing, during transportation, and you can see how the data are different or how the data are similar for different supply chain. And you can select and you can see this analysis by paper or by countries. So it's another option of tool to see and explore the data. And here we have access to the whole database, so you can find the crop information, the country information, the supply chain level information, the method that the paper used to have the data to estimate the loss, the year of the paper, the loss, the amount of loss, and the bibliography of the paper here. So you can access the whole data, and if you want, you can select some specific crop, specific countries, and apply filters to select a specific supply chain level. And you can download all this database. So that's the main idea of SciPoc over here, and it's to provide and consolidate information in a few examples of analysis to whom is interested in post-harvest loss data and post-harvest loss information. So back to my presentation here. So again, you can access to the SciPoc platform and navigate through the indicators and analysis using this QR code and this web link. So SciPoc is free of charge, but you have to register yourself to access the data. And we ask for registration because we are creating a network of people that are interested in post-harvest loss data. So, and more than that, if you have a new paper or a new result on post-harvest loss measure, please let us know. You can send it to us, and we are more than happy to include it, your result, your paper, in the SciPoc platform and make it available in an easier way to all researchers, to different institutions, or to the ones who wants to see post-harvest loss data. So you can send to us using this link, using this QR code, or you can contact me directly by using my email account. So my mail address. So thank you very much for your attention. I really appreciate the opportunity of being here today, speaking with you about this updated version of SciPoc. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Fernando. I hope you will hear this afterwards. Was again a very interesting presentation. I recognize some of what he explained yesterday, but I think now for the bigger audience, this is very interesting. The following presentation is not about the average product, but it's I think it's very important is that we are working with a living product that has high variability, amongst which bruising sometimes, and Emnon Lichte will explain more about that.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So we could bring one of the fancy research that we do in the Volcani, but for this part of this consortium, we wanted to address the issue of tomato losses and to see how, I mean, it's not a problem to store tomatoes in Israel in cold storage, but we want to see what happens under ambient conditions and to understand what are the skin disorders that we see under our circumstances. We couldn't be here because of the COVID, and to see what is the fate of those disorders in terms of storage. The research was done by Dr. Anurag Dagar, with the help of my technician, with Samir Drobin as a partner, and myself in the Department of Post-Harvest in the Volcani Institute. Okay, so we've heard today several very good lectures by Simon, by Loretta, about the spoilage of tomatoes, very interesting, very important. I didn't have access to this information, but from simple search, non-comprehensive search in the literature, you can see in Ethiopia 40% losses with 20% post-harvest. That seems to be a low number compared to what we have in other places. For example, a study that was done in the framework of USAID by Davis and colleagues. They identified 21% losses at the farm level with 35% post-harvest, and we heard numbers approaching even higher, much higher losses. They listed the 6 main reasons for losses as over maturity at harvest, as rough handling during harvest, as poor post-harvest handling practices, poor quality containers, rough transportation, lack of temperature management. And those factors are still true in 5 years later. Probably the research was done 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, but those are the most important factors that we can identify. The objectives of this presentation is to characterize the type and relative quantity of tomato disorders and defects in the market in Israel. That's what we had as a reference to understand the progression of the major disorders and defects during storage at ambient conditions, and to study means to identify and mitigate the effects of the disorders and defects. Okay, so now this is an example. It was also presented, this slide, in the All Africa Post-Harvest Conference by Dr. Dagar. And so he selected, he purchased 4 tomato from 4 different sellers in the wholesale market. And what you can surprisingly see also in the Israeli market, these are intact fruits. And you can see that they're hardly, when you search carefully, you can hardly find intact fruits when you inspect them one by one. And the main disorders that here identified were unhealed cuts and healed scars, like they got wounded during cultivation, and then they had a scar on them. And then impact damage was a major defect for all the growers, all the sellers, one in particular, but that was the situation. Some of the disorders that he looked at are displayed here: cuticle removal, what he called unhealed cuts, abrasions, unhealed cut, again, shriveling, which I'll talk about a little bit later, gold specks, again, unhealed cut here, impact damage which is mainly pressure with or without removal of skin and all kind of irregular structures which are many times damaged. Now, he mapped the fate of the disorders, and the good news is that under our storage conditions, under our simulated storage conditions, which is 25 degrees at a humidity of 50 to 60%, unhealed cuts, microcuticle cracking, and all these do not express as, do not develop further from the time of harvest. So you can store the tomatoes for, in this case, for 33 days under those conditions without those disorders becoming relevant in terms of affecting the quality of the fruit, other than the initial damage that you see when you buy them. On the other hand, what develops quite rapidly during storage at 25 degrees is the problem of shriveling, or which is caused by water loss. And you can see it as early as 4 days, and it can continue to a very significant level. The scale on the y-axis is actually indexing, it's a decay severity, shriveling severity index that he generated. Decay became significant, but it was not necessarily due to the disorders that he saw in the beginning, because he followed each fruit and it was numbered. He knew what was the initial disorder. He knew what was the, the decay that developed was internal decay unrelated to those disorders. Now, we were looking for simple means to reduce the main problem that we saw, which was shriveling. And of course, we could use one of the sophisticated packaging systems, but we wanted to look at the simple solutions. So he used cardboards with a lid, or coated cardboards with, in that case, he used wax, which is used for coating fruit, but you can use any paint or anything of that will block water, will reduce or increase the humidity inside the box. And by this, he shows that he can mitigate the level of water loss and consequently the problem of shriveling. Now, this is something I should apologize here. What you see in those images are tomatoes imaged by a technique that, unfortunately, I was in the business unit last week, and they said, before we review this data, you're not supposed to specify what technology and what was the thing about. I'll have to come back and convince them that it's something that should be publicly available and not, but we'll see about it. So we did controlled bruising times 0. And you can see this white square in the middle of the tomato. And this is what the initial stage of the tomato. You don't see any external symptoms. But once you go 4 days and then 7 days and then 10 days, you see development of spots on the tomato. Sorry, you don't see anything on the tomato. You see it you see it only with the instrumentation, but that's there. And in this case, it's progressive skin disorder, which is not externally visible, okay? In another case, you can see on another tomato, the symptoms develop. We apply bruising. We see within 1 day development of this stain in a progressive manner that goes on by 4 days, 7 days. So that is something that we are trying to study. And here is an example of a tomato which was taken from the greenhouse, untouched. We take it to the laboratory very gently and use the instrumentation to visualize what is going on. And some of those tomatoes, like most of the tomatoes, you don't see anything at time 0. But some of the tomatoes, you see those spots or that you can see here, and they are bruised or naturally bruised from the greenhouse. So we think that we can use this technology to sort tomatoes between ones that have been damaged during processing and to sort them from the tomatoes that do not show those symptoms. Tomatoes that are, usually tomatoes, probably they cannot see it online. The pointer. So what you can see, the red is the cuticular layer on the tomato. Underneath there is the skin. And this is on the left side, you see a control that is undamaged cells. When you do mild bruising, you start to see under the skin is intact, but under the skin, there are cells that accumulate this red coloring, pigmentation, which is due to the saffronin blue and the fast green staining. And when you do severe bruising, you can see the cells under the skin are accumulating much more of this coloring, and that's a sign for a damage to the skin, to the cells under the skin. What you can see in the panel below is by SEM images of the tomato skin. So this tomato is intact. There is no bruising, but you can see that under severe bruising, the structure of the cells is, or the external structure of the cells is compromised. We are trying to understand what compounds are accumulating under the skin of the tomato using HPLC, but these attempts are not yet successful. Once we will find, we are trying to understand what compounds, probably phenolic compounds, accumulating under the skin, and to try to identify them and to see if that can help us to understand more about what happens when tomatoes are bruised. So I'll summarize here and conclude. The relative amount of intact tomato can be very small. Impact damage was the single most common defect that we can see under our conditions. Under ambient conditions, most of the skin disorders are static and do not develop into losses. Shriveling is the main disorder developing during ambient storage. Shriveling can be mitigated by coating cardboard boxes or other types of boxes, if plastic boxes, durable plastic boxes. Non-destructive imaging can detect internal bruising that develops during storage before symptoms are observed. I didn't show you those pictures, but those disorders or this bruising eventually after 2-3 weeks becomes visible and can lead to losses. Internal bruising can be common in marketed fruits, and the mechanism of the process is under study. And that's it, I think. And I should thank the consortium for leading me and Dr. Dagar into this research, because without the consortium, we wouldn't do it. We would continue to work with the grapes, with the peaches, and with all the stuff that we are already doing. So this is something that is, like contribution of the consortium, and I hope the understanding that will come out, and maybe other things will lead to interesting developments. Okay.
Thank you very much, Emnan. I think this again shows how complex it is to understand the product that we work with. I think it's already quite a challenge to deal with normal physiological decay, so to say, and now you add another dimension that I think is essential. I think a lot of the post-harvest quality-oriented processes are oriented on preventing or dealing with this kind of suboptimality, but I think it's a challenge to further integrate this. Thank you. Now we have still one other presentation on the program. It's by Steve Sonka. I would say last but not least, because I expect from him, again, very wise recommendations for post-harvest management.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, as we're viewing this. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm disappointed I couldn't be with you personally in Ghana. I'm sure I would have learned a considerable amount about what the consortium has been accomplishing, but circumstances just didn't allow that. So today I want to talk about a decision framework for post-harvest loss reduction. And we'll go through a brief introduction, describe the approach, give some illustrative results, and then end up with a conclusion. So why are we doing this? It turns out post-harvest loss has been with us and has been recognized for a considerable amount of time. In fact, in the 1970s, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution to reduce food waste by 50%. So, my friend, why has this persisted? Well, maybe it's because people aren't aware. So for fun, I went out to Google and I typed in 50% food wasted, and I hit return. And within a second or two, it identified 66 million hits where that term is being used. So that concept, that measurement is out there. But that term, that measurement by itself has really weak relevance to decision makers. Okay, there's a lot of loss, but what specifically should I do? How much should I invest? Where should I invest it? What should I expect in terms of benefits? That leads to the idea of decision support systems, which is essentially computerized modeling and other capabilities that really focus on specific decision choices, both in a planning sense and in a monitoring sense after decisions have been made. And that's what we're going to see as an illustration. We've had the good fortune to be working with excellent collaborators in the Iringa Hope Cooperative. Iringa Hope is located in Tanzania, and I'll talk about them briefly in a second. So some characteristics of decision support systems. They're particularly relevant to less well-structured, under-specified problems. The things that we don't deal with necessarily in a firm or an organization every minute, customers calling for price information, that's a very structured setting. As developers, we need to remember that oftentimes the users, particularly in agriculture and agribusiness, I say here are non-computer people. What I really mean is they may be very computer literate in terms of using Excel or using Word or Outlook or other capabilities or on their smartphone, but they're not developers of software, and that needs to be taken into account. Also, because decisions have this nasty habit of changing unpredictably, and circumstances change sometimes unpredictably, we need tools that can be flexible and adaptable as time proceeds. I wanted to point out very quickly here that a decision support system is not necessarily identical to an academic economic analysis. Academic economic analyses, we emphasize objectivity, repeatability, general relevance to people who are interested in general. DSS applications recognize that decisions are specific. One cooperative's interest in using PICS bags is not identical necessarily to a private firm, even though they're in the same region. Oftentimes decisions are made without objective information, without information from a scientific study or a journal article, but yet decisions have to be made. And managers inherently have to trust or believe in the validity of the data in the model to really get most value and make a decision they're confident in terms of application. Academic economic analyses are often helpful, and when we can get general data that's relevant from such an analysis and use those in decision support systems, those are good things. The collaboration I mentioned is with Aringa Hope Cooperative. They are focused on enhancing the well-being of smallholder farmers in the regions in which they work. Aringa Hope has been around for over 10 years. It has 3,000 members. It's really locally led as a traditional cooperative, a local board for the Aringa Hope structure. It operates in the Aringa region, sort of central Tanzania, and maize is a key staple crop there, and maize is going to be the topic, the subject of the illustration we're going to look at here in a second. I'm going to hypothesize here a strategic decision context. We have managers that need to understand the potential member benefits as they think about alternative interventions that they can employ or introduce with their cooperative members. They want to feel confident that the members will benefit if we're successful in these interventions. And we're going to look at three. We're going to look at post-harvest technologies such as hermetic storage, PICS bags, improved drying practices, use of moisture meters at harvest and as we move into storage. We'll look at improved crop production inputs, better quality seed, better quality fertilizer, plus considerable education, and then post-harvest storage and the ability for the farmers to receive credit for stored grain. Now, in reality, Aringa Hope is doing all of these. And so we're really fortunate here to have experience-based information as well as research-based information that we put together as inputs into the model. Now, decision support systems, even a relatively straightforward one like we're working with here, tend to generate a lot of data. And I'm going to have to show some data relatively rapidly to stay within the 15 minutes. As we look at results on the right-hand side in the green box will be a description of the scenario. On the left-hand side, the gray shaded information is actual numbers. And we're not going to look at all the numbers. We're not going to go through this number by number, just look at some of the key findings. We're going to start out by looking at the baseline results. I want to note that the numbers we're looking at here are annual estimates expressed in US dollars. The model works in Tanzanian shillings as well, but it seems that US dollars are more generally familiar to audiences such as we have here today. In the baseline, we're looking with the situation that exists in central Tanzania in general. Farmers use limited productivity inputs, the tradition of saving some maize seed from last year's harvest as a seed for next year's harvest. Low amounts of fertilizer, maybe some lack of confidence in the quality of the fertilizer. The storage techniques, the traditional storage techniques suffer considerable loss in terms of storage that's maize that's stored in the household. This leads to, the way we're going to structure the scenario, the farmer needs to sell the entire crop at harvest and then purchase maize back during the year to use as a staple foodstuff in the family. Now, These are what we might think of as boundary scenarios. A farmer isn't going to sell all their grain at harvest. They are going to store some a month or 2 or 3 or 4, even though there are losses. But to make comparisons easier and to kind of draw some boundaries around the results, we're going to use these relatively extreme assumptions. Net cash flow for production, there is a net cash flow of $68 a year. But remember, the farmer had sold all the maize, which means they need to buy maize back during the year. Buying from a trader or even from local markets, the grain is higher priced just because it's being purchased. And then as the year progresses, typically the cost of the grain goes up that the farmer is purchasing back. The result of this, given the assumptions and the data provided to us, is an outflow of $147 a year, which results in a net loss, a net deficit of $80 a year. I struggle at this point to express what is really a very severe human condition as $80. It's $80 if the money exists, if the money is there to purchase grain. In reality, unfortunately, we're often talking about hunger, severe hunger in some cases, in those periods of the year when the next crop is growing, but they don't have harvest yet, and there's the stored grain is used up. But in a financial analysis, all we have are numbers to represent this very significant social problem. So let's look at what happens if we interject hermetic storage so that sufficient grain can be stored at home. The excess grain, the assumption is still sold at harvest. Turns out that there's actually less cash receipts because, again, remember that some of the grain is not being sold at harvest, but is being kept. But there is, and this assumption is there's no grain that's being purchased during the year. So the net effect is a significant improvement of $80 a year. But again, the farmers, or not again, but here the net cash position of the farmer is still relatively low. So money to buy school supplies, money to buy fuel for the motorcycle, money for improve the house, that cash isn't being generated, even though things are better. If we look at agronomy only, we see better quality inputs, and I'm going to move through these numbers quickly. What happens is receipts from production go up to 139, but we're assuming here there's no improved storage even for the household. So the farmer still needs to buy grain back during the year because they've sold all the grain. They have more grain, they still sell it all at harvest. The net position, still an improvement over the base case, but again, the net cash position is relatively low. Now we're going to add a third option that Oringa Hope is working with, where we combine better agronomy, improved storage capabilities in the household, and the capability for the farmer to store excess grain in the cooperative storage, which is relatively high quality storage for the region. Plus, the farmer can take out a loan, which provides about 60% of the current market price for grain, the harvest price, that the farmer can then use that cash for necessities, either family necessities or purchasing inputs for the next year. The result of that is a significant increase in receipts. Expenditures go up, but receipts go up even after paying off the loan. In this scenario, there's no purchase of grain during the year for home consumption, which results in a very significant improvement to $181 a year in positive net cash flow over the base scenario. Again, there are assumptions here, and the data and the assumptions and the data produce the results. So, trying in this example to illustrate how we can use decision-oriented tools to improve post-harvest management. And I really wish we could use the term post-harvest management more in our discussions and our policies. Yes, it involves technologies. Yes, it involves practices, but it's really the management that has to occur privately and publicly, that has to be improved if we're going to reduce post-harvest loss. I want to emphasize the quantitative results here are just shown as illustrations. The number 181 is indicative, but it is not a precise number. There is an overall implication, which is the post-harvest management technologies really can be only fully unleashed in concert, in many cases in developing agriculture, with agronomic practices and financial innovations. By themselves, the technologies can be helpful, but sometimes only at a marginal level that doesn't support continued adoption. Being able to sequentially and somewhat simultaneously put this package together can result in significant benefits. I want to thank our colleagues at Aringa Hope and my colleague at Centric Consulting who helped in the modeling, as well as members of the consortium and folks and my colleagues at the University of Maryland, as well as our funders, the Rockefeller Foundation and the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve. Well, this was the final presentation. It's now time for some questions. I think we have we had two presentations, so two people can directly answer any questions, and maybe there are also questions for the other lectures. So maybe somebody else can go into that. But I would ask, the floor is yours. Yeah, Amnon has a question? No, I hope not. Yeah.
It's a question to Steve. I tried to follow, but maybe I missed it. The data that you show was the result of the data collected in Tanzania, or it's something that that was tested as could be tested in practice by the reality in Tanzania. I didn't quite understand what was the flow from where the data was generated.
So thank you for the question. I probably wasn't real clear. We worked to develop and collect relevant research information and published information, and acquired what we could. But then we actually worked with the managers at the Aringa Hope Co-op, and we went through to them to say, well, we agree that's a good number, and maybe it's how much loss do you typically have with a PICS bag maize for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So even though that was a published number in that case, they agreed to those numbers as being reasonable with their experience. Other numbers, how much would the price of maize increase? Again, we had some information from research done at the University of Illinois, but then the question is, well, what exists in the local market? Because the farmers are buying maize back in the local market. So what is the typical markup? Use an economic term, marketing term, that a farmer could expect to suffer if they have to buy grain back. So there isn't good information on that number in the system. So we relied upon the managers who were making the decisions and have experience obviously in the region to give us those kind of numbers, which we might think of as softer numbers, in a way more qualitative, but as I try to emphasize, it is those managers who are going to have to stand up in front of the farmers, stand up in front of the board of the co-op and say, we should invest money to be able to provide PICS bags. We should start a program to provide loans. And so it is they who have to believe the numbers. And so that's why I wanted to draw the distinction between the kind of economic analysis I've done many times in my past, where Years ago, I had a group of agricultural engineers in Brazil who went out to measure post-harvest or harvest loss at the combine. And they had circles and they went in the field, they threw the circles down, they counted the kernels, they did random sampling throughout the fields and across the region. And those are really, really good numbers. Oftentimes you don't have those. So those kind of numbers, if they exist, we use. But if we don't have them, then the managers have to make a decision. So I know it's kind of an unusual because it's not, all the numbers aren't research-based, but they're either research-based or experience-based. Does that address the question?
Yes, I think Amnon agrees, Steve. If I may summarize your reaction, I think you say that the outcome of the decision support or the decision support system can give expected benefits based on the actual data given by the user, and then for the user, specific conclusions come from the system.
Well, and the other thing that I want to just add to that, these numbers now are numbers that can be compared to reality as it occurs. So there's an expectation that there will be gains that are very significant where they've been able to put those together. Those now are reference points for reality as they move forward. And it may explain why sometimes when we just do post-harvest loss by itself, particularly where there's limited productivity, yes, there's a positive benefit cost ratio, but the net cash is so small that frankly, the farmers lose interest and because the benefit isn't big enough. So it's important to use the decision support system both for planning and for monitoring as you move into an intervention.
Okay, thank you. In the meanwhile, I'll see that Fernando has also managed to connect to the meeting again. Welcome again, Fernando. It was a very nice presentation. I see
Yes.
more questions.
Yes, I have a question for Fernando. Fernando, I can see the database that you develop. One can actually download papers, scientific papers. Do you have any copyright issue, or would whoever is consulting the database have to, deal with that on their own in terms of subscription and all that? If they don't have the subscription, then they cannot download the papers.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we don't have some. Okay, the SciPoc system, we grab information from scientific papers. So that's the main idea. In our days, put together all information and we cite the bibliography. So we are referring all the data to a specific paper, to a specific bibliography. So doing that, I don't know how it could be seen in an international point of view, but doing that for us, we don't need some specific copyright issues or some kind of authorization, because we are citing the papers, we are citing the bibliography, and the SciPoc goal, the main objective, is to put the information together and available in an easier way to researchers, to students, to professors, to see the data and compare the data. So we are, okay, this is the number, this is the crop, this is the country. This is not our work. This is the bibliography for a specific work. So that's the main idea here. And we focus on researchers. Research that is already published in the Web of Science, Scopus, and other research databases, for example. So that's the main idea. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the main idea.
Yes, I think that's very clear. You gave the reference to the data values, and then the user can look up those references. Thank you.
I have a question for Fernando. I don't know, I don't know if you have already consulted now this database AFIS in Africa, where they're comparing all post-harvest losses. So is there then any difference or similarities? So I don't know.
Okay, thanks for your question, Quisito. Good to see you again. Yeah, in the beginning of the talk, I think AFIS was one, was important to give us an idea, to show us, oh, what can we do in terms of data-driven approach for making data available in terms of post-harvest loss issues. So we based the first steps, the first discussions of SIPOC in the AFIS idea, another FAO systems idea, and this kind of thing. But the main difference, I think the SIPOC and AFIS difference is related to the source of information. I think in SIPOC, we don't want to have an average number for a country specifically. We want to put each piece of information in the system and make references to the paper, to the students, to the researchers. So our main idea is to put information by information that came from papers. We don't want to have, oh, what is the average number for Brazil, for Ghana, or for a specific country? And AFIS, as far as I know, this is specifically for the Africa countries, right? And we want to make this kind of information to worldwide, to all the countries with have information available. So in short, the difference in SIPOC, we want to highlight the piece of information and make it comparable to other works, to other papers, comparing countries, and this kind of thing.
Okay, another question.
And more than that, I think one additional point, I think when you see the piece of information for a specific work, we can read the work, we can read the paper again, and grabbing other kind of information. So what are the methods? SIPOC, we are trying to put the methods that the paper used to quantify post-harvest loss, but what kind of trucks we are talking about in the paper, we are analyzing. So we can, starting with SIPOC database, we can grab another additional information for the papers, for the countries, and use the decision-making supported methods. We are trying to see some machine learning algorithms to work in the database, as I think Rory did some work in Iowa State University. So I think the main idea here is to see SIPOC as a starting point to increase the data and to help researchers and institutions to analyze post-harvest loss issues and make different kind of analysis and comparisons.
Fernando, you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Amnon. I want to, is the SIPOC open now for public, for the public, or you need to register, or you need to, because I was not able to get in yesterday.
Yeah, it's open. The system is running. During my presentation, I give the link and the QR code, but we can share the link by email if you want. And the system is running. It's open. It's free of charge, so everyone can access. The system is running in the server of University of São Paulo here at the .log, but we have no constraints to access from other places in the world. But we until now we are discussing it a little bit more. But you have to subscribe to the system. There is no cost, but we want you to subscribe to the system, to register to the system, to access the data, because we think this is a direct way to contact the research, to contact you, to contact the people that are interested in the data when you have an update, for example, or when you have a new tool included in Kiarma. So, oh, check it out again. There is no data, there is new data, there is a new update. So we think we can create a network of people, of researchers that are interested in this kind of data and communicate to them in a specific way. And I invited you and all people that are interested to send us papers, results, and new research to be included in the SciPoc database. So it's a very good way to increase the data and to interact with other institutions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I already accessed the database a number of times, and I only had to register by email, and you have you get full access to your system. So that's very nice. Thank you. Other questions?
My question is to Prof. Anurag. Yeah. Okay, so Prof, my question is, during your presentation, you shared some images on internal bruises in tomatoes. And I realized that even on day 0, we were having some bruises. Was there an instance where you harvested from outside physically an intact fruit, but you still realized you had a lot of bruises inside? Because we didn't get to see, we comparing a fruit you can say this is totally intact, but had no bruises.
Okay, so yeah, probably I didn't show you those images because like I could spend half an hour on this topic and there's much more information behind it, but it's tomatoes intact, you cannot see any external symptoms, but if you use this equipment, you can see what is happening under the skin. So, and that eventually is a progressive phenomenon. It develops within time, and we want to understand it, what is going on under the skin of the tomato. It's an interesting question. And also we don't know the final, we don't have enough information yet on what is the fate of those processes. So we know that in many cases it turns out to be losses. The skin is ruptured and the tomato is lost or starts to be to suffer from decay. But we don't have enough numbers on these processes, and we are trying to collect and to address this to understand what this technology where this technology can lead us.
Yes, there's still one question.
Yes, to Hannah. Yeah, very interesting work. Are you going to try to see the relationship between the micropores, so to speak, the perforation on the fruit, and the cuticular composition of the fruit? Is there any relationship?
From what we understand, it's not related to the epicuticle, or it's related to what happens to the cells under the cuticle or under the epicuticle, and that's where the damage is happening, and eventually it can lead to post-harvest loss as well. But to begin with, you can it's 1 week or even more that you don't see anything on the fruit surface. So there is more water loss happening. What we do is when we do the bruising, the controlled bruising, we are interrupting eventually with the cuticle. It's becoming not the original structure, it's more smeared. And under these conditions, there is more water loss happening through this tissue. And we can see also sometimes shriveling happening later and so on. But the interesting thing is what is going on in those cells under the skin.
Yeah, then final question, because I think it's time for the closing.
I forgotten the name of the presenter. I think it's from South Africa. I think he presented on the packaging of the pomegranate fruits. And
Alabendiao, are you still in?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Yeah. My understanding is that when you redesign the packaging from what is currently being used, you improve the airflow around the fruit, and therefore the fruit is better preserved, even in shipment and so on and so forth. What you demonstrated in the video with regards to a number of things when the package is in motion and all those kinds of things, and you did some simulations to be able to get the best results. What happens on impact? For example, if the box containing the fruit makes impact, for example, when it's if it's mishandled, will the airflow situation which you have improved, will it be of any consequence? Thank you.
Okay, and let me try to answer if I really captured the question.
Maybe I can repeat the question because I think I had more or less the same question.
All right.
You showed a very nice analysis and very nice CFD calculations, etc. for more or less an optimized system. I assume all the vegetable fruits had the same shape, etc. were nicely arranged. But the more you optimize the system, the more vulnerable it becomes for suboptimal impacts. And can you explain a bit on that?
Yes, the question is, you see, we are working with biological system. Fruits are biological. It's not like something manufactured in a factory. So we should live with that. I mean, normally fruits are grouped in class in terms of size or in some grading criteria, but the design of the cartoon is in consideration of that particular grading requirement in the pomegranate industry. So we designed it for class 1 pomegranate apple, which is in size bigger. And so it can also be used for smaller size pomegranate apples. So actually that technique is there in the carton manufacturing industry. They know how to take care of the biological variability in terms of the size of the fruit. So in the slide that I showed you from the concept, the measurement that we took, say in the diameter and the depth of the fruit, and when we take pomegranate, it also have this special feature called calyx, and so that is fragile, and that also should be there for visual effect in the market. So that requirement is also taken in the sizing of the box. So what we come up is by slightly optimizing the volume usage of a single carton, we'll be able to save a lot of space in a big container and in a cool store or in a processing line. So I think this answered I hope it answered the first question as to how we accommodate the biological variability in terms of size. Second question from first questioner is about what will happen if the cartoon will be dropped or mechanically damaged. Is that the question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. So in cartoon design and many other design as well, there is this way of capturing unforeseen circumstances in terms of safety factor or some constant that you use to multiply the design value that you get, so that it will account all those factors, vibration, and if there is some high moisture and those things. So if you simply take the design value, it probably is 5 order of magnitude. Say we can easily say multiply it by 5 in terms of strength. So the industry has a way to handle those unforeseen factor in terms of design safety factor. So in this design as well, those factors are included. And in any way, there is always mishandling. And so in the industry, there is this huge debate if some physical damage is created in the other side, and tracing back to who created that damage will probably go back to the grower. So that indeed is a huge problem, to know who is responsible for a certain damage. So that indeed is a very crucial problem, but it's difficult to include it in a given design. But in terms of the strength of the carton, and so that it account for unforeseen loading and vibration, we make use of safety factor for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very clear explanation.
Thank you.
With this, I want to finish this session, and I now want to give the floor to Joseph for some closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, we've come to the end of today's session. Unfortunately, Prof. Maya is caught up in a Zoom call, so he has to step out. But then on his behalf and then on behalf of the consortium, we would like to express our appreciation for all those who are making possible for we to have our session today. Indeed, it would not have been possible without having our students across the different institutions making presentations in terms of the respective areas that we are working on. And so indeed, we are very much grateful for all of you sitting in since morning. I know it's been very tiring, but we've been able to have the stamina and the courage to sit in, to be able to go through all the sessions from morning, and we are very much grateful for that. We want to have a group photograph, because today we have quite a large session with our students around, and so we will step out and then have a group photograph outside, and then also there will be a dinner this evening. So we want to encourage all colleagues to join the consortium members at the engineering guest house around 7:00 p.m. For a dinner, and then we also would want to invite the students who will still be around, who are not traveling back, that you can also join us for dinner this evening. So indeed, we are very much grateful, and hopefully we'll meet tomorrow for the next session and the closing session. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.